I get all smoky in my face.
Even at this low altitude. Right side up. Stars of this particular part of the program. The supporting actors are Martin Carrington and David Burrell flying the two aircraft. By Franklin. A particular brand of watch known especially through the aeronautical world. And lest you wonder incidentally about the booming, the rasping sound of these aircraft, it derives from the fact that the propellers are directly driven. There is no reduction gearing. Gearing between the engine and the air screw, the propeller. And so the propeller tips are moving at very high, potentially supersonic speeds. And it's the movement of the air at those sorts of speeds that's producing that very distinctive so-called buzzsaw effect. We'll rig some other which support them around waist level. This is where they get to feel the negative G. And now it all goes positive. But negative again. This is the roller coaster. Modern regulations don't allow quite that anymore. On the aircraft, you might be clutching at a pair of reins, so to speak, was the way it was done originally. So those on top, those standing on the wing, feet in recesses, and they're supported fore and aft in a brace. Supermatics have taken it still further because they've got the Civil Aviation Authority to allow them to have a swivelling rig. So you will notice that aerobics are done, if not acrobatics, on top of aero supermatics, aircraft and routine. And of course at moments like this, the extraordinarily demanding mirror. Martin Carrington flies the aircraft inverted, and David Barrell flies the lower aircraft to close the gap between the two. Well, Danielle and Stella have, of course, to wear their broadest, brightest smiles throughout the whole of the sequence, and at the same time discreetly but decorously remove the squashed insects from their teeth later on. Now coming round to display centre, power comes on, smoke comes on. Pulling up. The right wing brake. Should you wonder, the smoke incidentally is derived differently from that we saw on the Swift sailplane a little earlier. In this case it's derived in the same sort of way that certain RAF aerobatic team produces smoke on the Hawk aircraft. Diesel fuel is injected into the exhaust of the engine. It naturally produces white. Come from injecting dyes into the needle in turn. more help, it must be said. Again, free of charge. Again, a special Royal Navy goodie bag is the prize at the end of the competition. And there's no overall winner. There are challenges all throughout the day, and indeed winners throughout the whole of the day. So if you haven't yet chanced your arm and skill and memory and more on the Maritime Aviation Support Force Challenge, then to Hangar C2, where you'll also find, waiting to challenge you, Operation Air Day. Waiting to take off are 4 examples of an aircraft we're going to be seeing for the very last time here today. Now for those of you in particular who are the keen photographers, this is something you will never see again. Rolling now for Jetstream. That, however, awaits us at 1 o'clock. In the meantime, you'll see helicopters lifting off from various parts of the airfield too. While you're over in C2 hangar, in contrast, don't forget over there 824 Squadron is well represented, illustrating different facets of Merlin training. The engineering training section is setting you another challenge. See how fast you can build a gnome. Now, that's not quite the fairyland fantasy that it sounds like. The gnome, of course, is the engine of the Sea King helicopter. Yep. And nor is that challenge quite as complex as it might sound. However, it's not immediately as easy as it might look. So if you fancy yourself as a true engineer, take on the challenge of building an engine with the engineering training section in C2 hangar. And the tow has started. Joined by the twister.
Yeah, ask if they do that far.
As you can see, the Pawnee is attempting to straighten things up for the Guy Westlake in the sailplane. And then they roll. Ladies and gentlemen, departing as a 3-ship indeed, Team Swift. You've heard the name, you've read the name in the newspapers, on the radio and the television. Well, there's an explanation for the first time of just what Culdrose is doing over there, and that means what Culdrose is doing here to support it. As we come into this period of longer daylight hours, it means that night flights become more important because of the training that allows not only for operations such as that, but of course in support of the search and rescue task, which is the constant one here at Culdrose. And so this is an opportunity to thank those of you in the local community for your forbearance on that very issue. All of that is summed up in this formation that now opens this afternoon's flying programme from Royal Naval Air Station Culdrose, from many of its squadrons and its various aircraft types. Goodbye. How long you'll be away, where you'll be going. If you're going up your base, make sure you've got some charts, you've got some flares perhaps. Take with you the basics. Make sure that when you decide that it would be rather nice to bathe in the shallow waters, that airbed you're on doesn't go floating out. Things of that order. And you'll find the Coast Guard here and the Royal Naval Institution. And indeed, some wonderful airfans having to ready to test some of the tests to help you avoid. One, again, 31st of the year when you all got other things in mind for New Year's Day. That wasn't the case for 771. In the first 12 days, for example, of this year, Culdrose answered 15 emergency calls out. Of course, often in that early part of the year, that was some very difficult weather as well. Even later, a little later in January, a fisherman from a Spanish fishing vessel was airlifted from the vessel and taken to Trelisk Hospital, the Royal Cornwall Hospital. That was a vessel some 200 miles off the Isles of Scilly. It was struck by some of the vessel's fishing gear. And again, it's often the case when 771 responds, a paramedic from the South West Ambulance Service was taken on board to provide extra care as well. In May, for example, another very busy weekend, to the cruise ship Braemar at anchor off the Scillies to airlift an injured passenger to, again, the Trelisk Hospital in Truro. Even before the helicopter returned to Culdrose, it was retasked to the Penzance area to pick up 2 casualties from a crashed car. And later that afternoon, another emergency airlift from the cruise ship Braemar, an elderly passenger suffering chest pains, taken to Trelisk. The next day, a crew was scrambled to a serious road traffic collision near Oakhampton. 4 people trapped in the car, 2 of them seriously injured. All 4 airlifted to Plymouth Airport and taken to Derriford Hospital. the only Hawker Seahawk left airworthy in the world, and it is one that was originally restored to airworthy condition, having been built in 1954 here at Culdrose in 1978. A single-seat, carrier-borne interceptor and ground attack fighter come fighter bomber. And in talking of history, one must recall that its direct origin lies in Hawker's first jet aircraft, the P-1040. Work on which began in 1943. The unarmed prototype first flew in 1947, and the first operational squadron of Seahawks was 806, colours worn by this very machine. That was at the former Royal Naval Air Station Brawdy in Pembrokeshire. The squadron being so equipped in March of 1953. While a Hawker design, and the first Seahawks were built by production of Seahawks was switched to Armstrong Whitworth and Coventry and Baginton, and this is one such example. The very last of 555 Seahawks for the Royal Navy was delivered in 1964. This was the ultimate variant, taking advantage of the more powerful Rolls-Royce Dean engine, the 103. Increased thrust by 200 pounds, up to 5,200 pounds. Subsequently replaced by the bigger Submarine scimitar in service, a process that began in 1958. 806. Again, the Ace of Diamonds, this aircraft power, was the last to serve. Disbanded in 1960, returning from a Far East cruise in HMS Albion. Operational squadrons of the Royal Navy were equipped with the Seahawk, plus 3 in the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, and there were 5 training squadrons. In fact, it's one of those, 738, that publicly was perhaps the best known, because in 1957, at the SPAC display at Farnborough, it had 5 of these aircraft painted red and equipped with smoke to form an aerobatic team. In much contrast, though, the operational highlight of the Seahawk's career in Royal Navy service came in November 1956. Operation Musketeer, the Suez landings. Aircraft from 800, 802, 804, 897 and 899 squadrons flying from the carrier's Albion 20mm cannon with 200 rounds per gun. Beneath the wings, 4 500-pound bombs or 4 90-gallon drop tanks, plus up to 23-inch rocket projectiles, or a combination of mines, sonobuoys and the like. Range around 500 miles, maximum speed clean, with no underwing stores, for example, around 560 miles an hour. So Culdrose's Seahawk returns to Culdrose.
Have your cameras ready as Chris and Becky turn to face each other before deploying a nose over to cross in the middle. Becky has flown an aeroplane, thus proving that prior experience is not necessary. As the Black Cats run in towards each other, they're aiming to stop side by side on the crowd centre, so they'll be maintaining good communication in order to get the timing just right. One of the unique features of the maritime links. Becky has landed on and turned the nose wheel through 90 degrees to the caster position. This allows the helicopter to turn on the spot, a useful ability for operating from a frigate or destroyer's small flight deck. Meanwhile, Chris, who has remained at the hover, demonstrates a basic manoeuvre familiar to any self-respecting helicopter pilot, the spot turn. Day-to-day, they are regular full-time flying instructors on the 702 Squadron, and so have to fit display training and rehearsal around their teaching duties. This makes Becky and Chris probably the two busiest people on the squadron. As I speak, they are setting up to perform a carousel, a precision manoeuvre which requires high levels of control coordination, as both the yaw pedals and cycling stick are used at the same time.
Ladies and gentlemen, patience rewarded. I said you would have a longer, fuller look at this aircraft type to which we bid farewell today. Farewell in terms of appearance in public here at Culdrose. That aircraft type being the Jetstream T2. Of Lieutenant Commander Simon Kirkham, who's the senior pilot at the squadron, and Lieutenant Swain Alsop. Over their career with 750 Squadron, just short of 1,000 observers have been trained on this aircraft. It's had something like 500 modifications to the aircraft, so 3 per day. If anything, an even more intensive rate in its own right. In for the break. The very elegant lines of the Jetstream are compromised a little in the T2 form. I've actually produced these aircraft across. 750s. Current speed. Is this an end to Culdrose history, Royal Navy history? But it's the end of the last public flying display by a Handley Page aircraft. Full stop. Now the so-called K-Sound approach at the end by Simon Kirkham. A very, very steep approach. Lest you wonder about the name Handley Page. Well, not only was Sir Frederick, later knighted, one of the earliest of pioneers in this country in terms of aviation, but of course his was the company that produced the Hamden medium bomber of the Second World War, the Halifax heavy bomber of the Second World War, went on to produce that most subtle of the 3 V bombers, the Victor, but indeed was in the business of building the strategic bomber before the term was even coined back in the First World War, to the degree that Handley Page appeared in the early Oxford dictionaries of that period as synonymous with heavy bomber. A very different ending, therefore, to the Handley Page career, which in public terms has just been accomplished courtesy on the Handley Page, latterly Scottish Aviation Jetstream T2. Right, that was another aircraft getting airborne off to hold, to come back in a little while, but I think we are now about to launch an aircraft into its display. Indeed, that is the case. Again, we've gone up the other end of the scale in terms of dimensions, and indeed a very different role. is an aeroplane that in many ways looked more at home here at Air Day last year, when things were getting decidedly amphibious. But that is the point. It is an amphibian, this particular variant, so copes just as well with the dry as with the wet. Airlines, Eastern Airways, I think, is the most numerous user of the type, using Jetstream 41s with Garrett TP331 engines. But by definition, they tend not, of course, to be seen in this way. Now, in fact, we're going to see, yes, the Great War display team make their way homeward. Next, a very short takeoff. This is one of the great advantages of having rotary in this aeroplane. Station, for example, very close to London. Needed hardly any warm-up time at all, so they could not only take off in a very short distance, but take off very quickly to try to intercept. That's the Fokker triplane, first away. Then at low level, the Newport 17, French design, in the colours of the Escadrille Lafayette, American volunteers flying with the French services. Then the Sopwith Pup. So the SE-5A is indeed reluctant. So the stage, therefore, is that of the PBY-5A Kathleen. Land-based aircraft in the UK, and so the concept of the Hurricat, or the catapult-armed merchantman, was introduced. When a single Hurricane fired by rockets from a catapult on one of the escort ships of a convoy would seek to down the FW200 before it could report on a convoy's presence and indeed potentially either bomb the convoy and or aid the U-boats. Not the most satisfactory of means, but a necessary one until such time as the longer ranged aircraft could be developed to bridge the so-called U-boat gap. Aircraft that served both with the United States Army Air Force at the time, and the United States Navy, and indeed in particular with Coastal Command of the Royal Air Force. Two key ones both came from the same design set, were consolidated. One of them was the B-24 Liberator, the other was this, the BBY-5, the Catalina. Both had in common high aspect ratio wings, giving them long range, long endurance, and indeed a considerable weapons carrying ability too. And they helped turn the tide against the U-boats.
Yeah, I think so.
While originally produced for the US Navy, an example was brought to this country in 1939 for evaluation. 50 were ordered by the Air Ministry at the outbreak of war, but by the end of the Second World War, some 578 had been delivered to the RAF. It says a great deal for the tenacity of the crews and indeed the efficacy of this aircraft that by the end of the Second World War, two RAF Catalina pilots had been awarded the Victoria Cross. probably post-war, as indeed the markings of this aircraft depict. All undercarriage done. And in for the landing. Oh, it certainly looks smooth and would appear indeed to be considering motorcycle display team. The Flying Gunner is about to take the stage in the arena. But out on the runway, it is another American design. Stage. And does so. It became clear that Britain's aircraft factories would be under attack and therefore would be very hard pressed to keep up with current demands, as it were, particularly with the need for replacement to the degree that was necessary for the Battle of Britain, of course, those 70 years ago. So a British purchasing commission went to the United States to see what American industry can offer. Incorporated a very high degree of combat experience. John Beattie displays this aircraft for us this afternoon. A name, of course, that once had dark blue overtones here at Culdrose, when John was on the Strength of 705 Squadron, for example, instructor with the Gazelle. Since retired from the service, he's flying another machine from Tim Manners, Kennett Aviation. This is the Wasp HAS-1, the Westland Wasp HAS-1, the predecessor of the Lynx that we saw earlier in the afternoon. Designed for a crew of 2 and perhaps 3 passengers, again very close to that of the Lynx. There were some 98 aircraft built, and 829 Squadron, which of course is here flying a much larger machine these days, was the first to be commissioned on the type, that in March of 1964. Rotor diameter of some 32 feet 3 inches. It's powered by a Rolls-Royce Nimbus, just over 300 shaft horsepower. so maximum speed of around 120 miles an hour. So to undercarriage configuration to cope with the demands of operating from smaller ships, frigates and destroyers. That's John Beattie completing his sequence on Tim Manners' Wasp HAS-1. The Victor. Only one of those aircraft remains. Only one example is airworthy. It is this, the Vulcan B-2. Years ago, this very month, this particular airframe made its first flight and became the first of the developed Vulcans, the Vulcan B-2 variant, to enter Royal Air Force service. After the first flight of the prototype Vulcan, it appeared at that year's SBAC display at Farnborough and was rolled by its test pilot in front of an audience. Well, demonstrating that key configuration, the world's first large delta-wing bomber. The aim was to reduce drag by enclosing the fuel, the engines and the bomb load within the wing, and that wing is around 7 feet thick at the root. The delta layout gives the Vulcan a long range. Mildenhall, who on seeing the Vulcan arrive at that base for its final display season, saying, "Hey, is this the bomber you guys are retiring? I don't know why you don't keep 9 of them and paint them red."
Wow! Yeah, here it comes. Yeah, you tell him. They're a lot of money. We will. Look, it's coming.
That was the sound and the effect of 4 Bristol Olympus 201s in this case, turbocharged into position, and thus they reappear as, ladies and gentlemen, Team Viper. Civilian team. They fly aircraft of mixed provenance and indeed colour scheme. The lead aircraft is a Hunter T7, a 2-seat version of the aircraft conversion, showing the vehicle marked scheme. In the slot there, the red, white and blue Hunter. first fighter ground attack. FGA-9, one that's by the air forces of Botswana and Kenya. In Swan, therefore, Team Viper. You see the equivalent of the T7. Different sort of flying he's undertaking right now. Now that's a little bit of the blue note. Pilots, again ex-RNAS, Yemen, Kuwait and Singapore, taking. Now back again, from the right, the Hunter pair. Strike Master's lead. Hunter T7 follows using its braking parachute. Doesn't want to catch up too quickly on the Strike Masters.
Yeah, no, it's under the heavier one. So
oh wow. Seven,
The Hurricane was the first to show the Royal Navy that a land-based fighter could be adapted for use based on catapult fighter units and indeed from carrier decks. That though, while basically the same power plant configuration as this aircraft, had a much wider undercarriage, which made it therefore potentially be easier to land on an unyielding carrier deck. Well, the next logical step was to go for the higher performance that the Spitfire offered. Essentially the fitting of an arrestor hook to a Spitfire 5 was done in 1941 and trials thereby conducted. Ultimately, it went on to become a very significant aircraft in Fleet Air Arms service, first going into a squadron, 807, in June of 1942. 801 followed in September, and both those squadrons embarked their Seafires in Furious to take part in Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa in November 1942. That was the largest naval action of the war to date.